welcome to Monday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. And not only do I have a puzzle today, I've also got instructions. Hooray! Not only that, but in fact I've actually used the instruction set for this puzzle before, because this is a follow-up puzzle by RockyRoer, the American maths teacher, on his divisional cage sums, I think it was called. So this is divisional cage sums 2, and I've got no excuses today about forgetting rules about orthogonally connected big clones. Seriously though, if you didn't watch yesterday's video and you have a streak of sadism in you, you might enjoy it if you want to see a man get bamboozled, or if for that matter you just like enjoying sensational Sudoku puzzles. Then do have a look at it, because what Bataku came up with in that puzzle is quite astonishing. A couple of things to mention before I reread the rules to RockyRoer's puzzle. Do have a look at our Kickstarter campaign if you've not seen it so far. This is our campaign. It's only got 8 days left now to create the greatest Sudoku book there has ever been. We are closing in on the latest stretch goal, which will give the community another 10 puzzles to include in the book. So that's pretty exciting. I think we might get there, probably not today though. But anyway, have a look. There's a card on the screen. Also, of course, check out Sam Kappelman-Lyon's competition puzzle, which we launched a couple of days ago. It is a beautiful but brutal Sudoku, and I'll put a link to it under this video along with the instructions. And we're looking for the best entry in terms of both logical path and beauty, artistic impression of the Sudoku. We've already had several amazing entries in, but I think there's even better to come. Don't send in any entries that need bifurcation for the Sudoku. I promise you, you do not need bifurcation to solve Sam's puzzle. You just need to come up with some clever tricks. Now, let me read you the rules to RockyRoer's puzzle. What we have got is normal Sudoku rules apply. Normal killer Sudoku rules apply, by which I mean, for example, the cells in this cage here have to sum up to a clue that's missing in the top left-hand corner of the cage. Normally in a killer Sudoku there would of course be a little digit up here which would tell us the sum of these cells, and you cannot repeat a digit in a cage. And as RockyRoer says, solvers need to determine what the cage totals are, and they must place them in the upper left corner of each killer cage, which has been coloured blue. So what RockyRoer has done in this puzzle is he's told us where the killer Sudoku total would normally appear. I mean, as a rule, it's always in the top left-hand corner, or top leftmost cell of a cage. Now, here's the tricky bit. In addition, every cage total must be divisible by the first and last numbers in the row or column, or row and column, I think that means, in the row and column that contain that cage total. So, for example, if the cage total in row 1, column 4, that's this cell, so this cage, if this cage summed to 6, then what we're saying is that cell, so the first and last cells in row 1 and the first and last cells in column 4 would all have to divide exactly into 6. So they'd have to be 1, 2, 3 or 6. So those cells there would have to be 1, 2, 3 or 6. So that's how it works. You basically we're going to have to hone in on the value of the cages and then use that to sort of propagate the numbers at the start and ends of the rows and columns that would contain the cage total. So it's a really interesting rule set. Now, of course, in RockyRoer's first puzzle, he did actually include several cage totals out of the generosity of his heart. His heart has obviously got harder because there are no cage totals at all here, and that probably makes it rather difficult. The way to play, click the link under the video as usual. With that, I get to play. Let's get cracking. My eyes are instantly drawn to the central box because, well, it's got a sort of bullseye geometry to it. I know those yellow squares there will add up to 45 because they'll contain all the digits from 1 to 9. So this cage total must be some total between 36 and 44 inclusive, because this cell must be some digit between 1 and 9. This can't be 1. I mean, that's fairly self-evident. If this is 1, then we're saying that all all of those cells need to equal 1, because 1 is the only divisor of 1 is going to be the number 1. That's not going to work, so you can't put 1 in there. No, actually you can't put a prime number in there, can you? That's not going to work. That's clever. Okay, right, so look, if you try and put a prime number in the central cell of the grid, the cells at the beginnings and ends of the row and column containing the prime number are problematical because, well, what numbers can we put in the yellow squares? We can put the number 1 in one of them, but the other digit will have to be a 5, and that will repeat in the row or column. So that doesn't work. And that's probably a good thing, because if this can't be prime, it can't be 1, 2, 3, it could be 4, it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 9. So this one, no. Okay, so let's think about this further. If this is 4, what happens to that one? That has to be, this cage total would now be 41 to ensure the whole box adds up to 45. 41, last time I checked, is prime. So again, we get a problem. We could put 1 in one of these cells, but we'd have to put 41 in the other one. And 41 is not a valid Sudoku number. So this cannot be 4. It can't be any digit that's going to make this a prime number. So 6 is 39, 8 is 37, that's prime. So this can't be 8. So this has to be 6 or 9. 9 would give 36. Oh, 36 is horrible, because 36 is basically divisible by just about everything. Oh. Okay, but look, if this is a 6 or a 9, what digits go into those cells? It's got to be digits that can divide 6 and or 9. So 1 works, 2 might work if this is 6. Oh, bother. 3. The problem is, yeah. Oh no, you can't. We can't include itself. So it has to. Yeah, sorry. I was just wondering whether I could put, for example, 6 in here, but of course I can't. The only way that I could put 6 in a yellow cell is if that cell is equal to 6 itself, which will repeat in the row or column. So that's complete nonsense. I don't think this can be. These yellow cells can be any higher than 3. That feels like it might matter, doesn't it? So this cage total is 36 or 39. I don't want it to be 36. I really don't. 39 is much, much more restricted, because 39 is, of course, we can express that as 1 times 3 times 13. And the marvellous thing about that is that 13 is not a valid Sudoku total. So if this was 39, these cells would all have to be 1s and 3s. And that breaks. That breaks. Beautiful. And that's going to make this 36, which is not beautiful. But at least this does break. Look. So, if we think about what's happened in column 4 now, this cell here, whatever this cell sums to, it has to be divisible by 3, because one of these 2 digits is definitely a 3. Now, how can we make this cage sum to 3? Well, it's tricky. If this is 3, you can't do it at all, because you'd have to put 0 or another 3 in this square. So you've got to put 1 in here. Now, in order for this to be divisible by 3, that means you've got to put 2 there. But this leads to a bit of a problem, because this cage now adds up to 3, but I need to put things that divide into 3 into those 2 cells. Now I can, well, there's just no way. I could put 3 in one of them, but the other one will most certainly have to be a 1. That will repeat the 1 in the row, and that will break the puzzle. So what do we learn from that? Well, we learn the rather useful information. We actually get a digit, which is much better than I did yesterday. Took me about, well, after about 25 minutes of yesterday's puzzle, I had less information in the grid than I did at the start, which I think is a record, because I somehow managed to delete the colouring in that cell as well. But now I know that this can't be 39, so this has to be a 9. Therefore, that we can remove 2 from all of those cells. Look, whoops. This has to be 36 as a sum. And the reason I don't like this is it means that all of these squares, therefore, have to divide into 36 exactly, which means that basically they can be anything, all but. They can't be 5 or 7. They can literally be everything else. They can literally be everything else. Oh, good grief. Oh, no, they can't be 8. 30, that's not right. 36 doesn't divide by 8. 32 and 40 divide by 8. Okay, so we get a massive restriction, therefore, in those cells. Now, no, I suppose, look, let's come back to this then. This can't be 9. Yeah, okay. If this was 9, that would mean this cage has to be divisible by 9. But it can't be, because we can't put 0 in there, and you can't put another 9 in there. So the same's going to be true of 6. I can't make this cage add up to 12, and it can't add up to 6 if this is a 6. Same is true of 4. This can never get to 8. So this is actually very restricted. This can't be 2. That's rather nice. Look, if this is 2, this cage has to add to an even number, but this is an odd number, so that's impossible. So that's not 2. So it's actually what we've got here. Let's get rid of the... Oh, what am I doing? I just want to get rid of the 2. So this is a 1-3 pair. Oh, but that was a problem last time, wasn't it, with the... Oh, but because this doesn't... I see. Because this doesn't have to be a 1-3, I don't have to make sure... This doesn't have to be divisible by 3 this time. In fact, it's not divisible by 3. It's divisible by 2. And that's enough. Right, sorry. If I hadn't looked at if I'd just looked at the cage rather than the column, I would have been much better off. This adds up to 4. Okay, so what am I going to put in those two squares? Given I can't include 1, I can include 2 and 4. They both most certainly divide 4 exactly, and they don't repeat anything in the row. So that's marvellous. Yeah, okay, and that means that must be very restricted now, because that has to divide into 4 exactly, doesn't it? So that means it can't be 3 anymore, and it can't be 6, and it can't be 9. So all of a sudden we're actually getting a little bit of traction, I think. Now, the other thing, of course, actually thinking about it, is that whatever I put in this square has to divide this cage, doesn't it? So I can't put 3 in there. If I put 3 in there, it doesn't divide 4, so I have to put the 1 in there, which means that's a 1. This is such a strange puzzle, honestly. It just... I feel like I'm doing it for the first time. I only did one of these about a week ago, and it feels I learned nothing from that process. Now, where do we look for our next breakthrough? Shall we look at... So this is a 7-cell cage, where this has to be divisible by 4. Which means it can be quite a lot of things, I think. It could even be as low as 28. It could be any number between 28 and 40. It's a 7-cell cage, so it can't be 44. This cage might be better because this also has to be divisible by 4. Okay, yeah, this can't be 8 because a 3-cell cage adding to 8 would need to have a 1 in it. So this is either 12, 16, 20. It can't be 24 because this square can't be a 7, 8 or a 9. Whoa, okay. So this is 12, 16 or 20. 20 is very tricky. And 20 is impossible because if this was adding up to 20, because this square is at the start of the column, whatever I put in this cell has to divide 20 exactly, but the only way of making this 20 would be to put a 4 here because 2 isn't big enough, and therefore a 7-9 pair into those two squares. and 7 or 9 don't divide 20. So, okay, so that's sensible. This is now either 16 or 12. If it's 16, that's really cool. If it's 16, this has to divide into 16 and not be 1, 2, 3, or 4. It has to be 8. So that would have to be, it can't be 4, that would repeat the 4, so it would have to be 6 and 2. So that works, I think. If that's not right, this would have to be 12. Which means this can't be 1, 2, 3, or 4. It has to be 6. And that breaks because that has to be a 2 or a 4 in order for this to add up to 12. And look, we've got far too many cells in the row that have to be the numbers 2 and 4. So this is not right. Well, let me go back. It is definitely right this is 8. It's definitely right this is 6. It's definitely right this is 2. It's definitely right this is 4. That's not 2 anymore. That's not 4 anymore. This cage has to be divisible by 8 now because that's at the top of its column. So this has to be, this surely has to be 24 then, if that's 16. If this was only 16, we'd have 16 plus 16 is 32. This square would have to be 13. That's not possible. If this was as high as 32, 32 and 16 is 48, and this would have to be minus 3. Minus 3 is not possible. So this is 24. Therefore, 24 and 16 is 40, which makes this cell have to equal 5 to give us the total for the whole box. Good grief. Okay, so now 5 must be in one of those cells, look, by Sudoku. These squares have got to be 5, 7 and 9. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, look, we can do Sudoku now. We don't even have to do funny divisible cage rules. There's a 5 in one of those cells. This is all part of the same cage. You can't repeat a digit in a cage. So these can't be 5. Get rid of 5 from there. That creates a 7-9 pair. That plonks the 5 into this square. 5 can't repeat in the cage. 5 is in one of those two cells. And 5 can't go here because that's at the start of a row, and that was a 24 total. 24 is not divisible by 5. That's not 5. In fact, probably what I should do, is should I try to work out what I can put into this? So this square here has to divide into 24. So it could be 1, 2, 3. It can't be 4, 6, or 8. Oh, good grief. Okay, that's not very helpful. And the same is true at the bottom, isn't it? So this has got to be 2, 4. It could be 3 actually. 2, 3, 4, or 6. Oh no, actually this one is better. Sorry, I'm being slow here. This one is in the same column as the 16 as well. So this one is better. This one can't be 3 or 6. So this is a 2 or a 4 because of it needs to divide 16 exactly. That gives us a 2-4 pair in row 9. Oh gosh, this is so counterintuitive. I'm sure you're all looking at me thinking, why is he being so slow about this? But I just find it very hard to scan it normally. Now this one. This cage now. This is really interesting, this cage, because this has to be divisible by 4. So if this was 7, 7 is prime. So if this was 7, this would have to add to 28, and that's impossible because it's got a 9 in it. That's really cool. So just to explain what I'm doing there, imagine you had a 9-cell cage. we know a 9-cell cage would have to contain all 9 different digits. It would therefore add up to 45. So a 7-cell cage that adds to 28 must be missing exactly 2 cells that sum up to 17, so it would not have an 8 and a 9 in it. So if I do put 7 here, because the cage total has to be a multiple of 28, it therefore has to be 28, there must be no 9 in the cage, and there is a 9 in the cage, so this therefore is not 7, this is 9, this is 7. This must presumably therefore be 36, is it? Is anything else possible? No, because it's got to be divisible by 9. 27 is not divisible by 4, so that doesn't work. So it is 36. It therefore is missing 2 cells summing to 9. Those 2 cells that sum to 9 are not 5, 4 or 2, 7 because there's those in the box already. So there's got to be a 2 and a 4 in those cells, which means there's no 2 there, I suppose. There's no 4 there, actually, because there's a 4 in this box. So this is either missing 3, 6 or 1, 8. Can we see which of those is the key? Whichever one it's missing, it's going to have in it one of those 2 digits. Look, it needs to either have 1, 8 in this box or 3, 6. Therefore, where does the 1 and the 3 go in this cage? That it must be in that square. So this square can never be a 2. This must be a 1 or a 3. What was this one? This was 24. I am so bad at this. This was 24. I've just realised I could have filled in this one as well. Right, so what can this be? This needs to divide into 24 exactly. This is more restricted, look, because several of the options have gone away here. This can be 1, 3. It can't be 4. It can't be 6 or 8. So is this a 1 or a 3? I think it is. This is rather good. Now I've got a 1, 3 pair in the row, so I can get rid of 1, 3 there. I can get rid of 1, 3 because of the 1, 3 in the column. This was 36, wasn't it? Oh, so that's still okay. That's still okay. Good grief. Right, sorry. So let's carry on. This one, I've not done the bottom of its column. So this one was 36. Oh, that's got loads of options again. Bobbins. So this square here can't be 1, 2 or 4, but it can be all of the other options. So it can be 3, it can be 6, it can be 3 or 6 basically. Oh, good grief. This square sees a 4 and a 5. So this has to be divisible by 20. And that means it has to be 20 because 40 is impossible in 4 cells. So this... Oh, this should be huge. This is huge. This is huge because now if this is summing to 20, that cell has to divide into 20 exactly, but it can't be 1, 2 or 4. So that has to be 5. And this square is subject to that same condition. So this has to be 1 or 2 because it can't be 4 and 5. Okay. Is that useful? I thought that would be a bigger breakthrough, I have to say. This square is interesting now because that has to divide by 7. This is so weird the way this works. This has to be divisible by 7. It can't be 7 because if it's 7, this would have to be a 1 and it can't be. So this is 14 or 21. Can't be 28 because you can't make 28 in 3 cells. And it can't be 14 because if it's 14, what do I put in there? It would either have to be 2 or 1 and it can be neither of those. So this is huge. This has to be 3. That means that's a 1. This is a 3. that's a... Oh, look at this. Suddenly, that's got to be a 6 now. This... That felt very important. Now, was it? This 1 means that's a 2 all of a sudden. That means that's not a 2. Okay, good. This has now got a 1. Ah, yeah. Look, this cage has now got a 1 in it. So it must have an 8 in it, and the 8 can only go in one of those 3 squares. So they are 2, 4, and 8. Therefore, this is a 6. These 2 squares have got to be they've got to be 3 and 8. And there's a 3 there. So that's 3, that's 8. This cage has to add up to 20, so that's got to be a 7. There's got to be a 9 in this cage, therefore this has got to be a 6. And suddenly I'm cooking with gas here. 7 and 9 into those squares. Oh, it's probably all going to die a death now, but that was exciting for a moment. That can't be 6. It got exciting for a moment and then it's just died. 7, 8, 9 into those squares. That can't be 9. I keep feeling like I've got to recheck all these totals. I don't know if that is what I'm meant to do. That one's interesting. Look, that's got to be divisible by 9 and 6. 3-cell cage. So it's got to be 18. Anything else will be too high or too low. Yeah, this has to be 18. Now, does that matter? Might do. I'm just not sure. Okay. I tell you what I could do, and I should have done immediately. This was 21. So these 2 squares must be restricted. It's not just one side. If this is 21, this has got to be 1, 3s and 7s, because that's the only way we can do that, given 7 and 3 as a prime. This square, therefore, is a 7. That's nice. So that's not 7 then. This one has to be a 1 by the same token. That gives us a 9 here. That means that's not a 9. 9 must live in one of those 2 cells. No 9 in that 18 cage anymore. Actually, this cage is now... Well, if it's got an 8 in it, the 8 can only go there. If it doesn't have an 8 in it, it has to be 7, 6, 5, and the 7 could only go there. So that square is a 7 or an 8. These 2 squares are also 7s and 8s by the same, well, not by the same, but just by completing the column logic. So this column still needs 4, 6, 8, and 9. 4, 6, 8, and 9. There's got to be a 9 in one of those, so that's not 9. Oh, I haven't looked at this cage yet. So maybe that's where I'm meant to look now. It's very interesting if that's a 7, because 7 is prime. Yeah, look. If that's 7, what can we pair that up with on the other side? Well, we can't pair it with 6, because then this would have to add up to 42, which would make that have to equal 1 and 2, which is impossible. If this is 7 and 8, 56 is even worse. So that's just absolutely impossible. So if this is 7, this would have to be 4. This would have to be 28. That would mean these would have to be 17. Oh, and this was 21 altogether, so this would make that a 4, which, rather annoyingly, looks like it's possible. So that would be exactly like that. 4, 9, 8. Now if this is not 7, oh, this is still restricted actually, look. Yeah, okay, so if this is not 7, the 8 would have to go, if the 8 went with 4 here, this would have to be divisible by 4 and 8. And it's a 7-cell cage. So it's got to be 32. It would have to be 32, because if it's 40, this would only add up to 5, and that would have to be a 16, because we know this cage is 21. So this would have to be 32, this would be 13. That would put an 8 in there, which is impossible, because there's already an 8 in the column. So 8 and 4 do not work. Well, that's it. If 8, it doesn't matter about what 8 goes with. If it has to be divisible by 8, it has to be either 32 or 40, because nothing else will get us to a total that's possible for these two cells. So in fact, this is 7, is where I'm getting to. Sorry, that took me a long time, but I think it's true. Therefore, we now know this is 28, so that means that must be 4, because both 6 and 8 don't divide into that. This has to be 4, 9, 8 to complete that. That forces this to be 7. And are we now done? No, far from it. We are progressing slowly. These have to be an 8, 9 pair, so this should be a 2. The 9, 8 there up there actually allow us to finish those. That makes that one a 7. Oh, that's a 7. That has to be 6 and 5. Let's put that in. That's 5 and 6. These two squares are 1, 2 and 4. We can see the 1's juxtaposition means we can do all of those. Oh, this is 18. Oh, this has been here for ages. This is 18. So that means that can't be a 4. Oh, for goodness sake, Simon. That's a 6. That's a 6. That's a 5. 6. What's going on here? That's got to be 9. That's got to be 8. That's got to be 9. That's got to be 9. That's got to be 7. 7's going in one of those squares. 8's going in one of those squares. We've almost used all the clues, I think. The 4 here fixes the 2 and the 4 there. That means that's not 4 anymore. There's a 2, 8 pair now into those two positions. Wow, that's quite interesting, isn't it? So what does this one have to be? This has to be divisible by 9 and 6. So that's... Well, 18 is probably what it has to be then. Because it can't be 36, because that's too many for 5 cells. And nothing else is going to work. So this is 18. So if that's an 8, no, okay, yeah. If this is 8, you've now got to put 1, 2, 3, 4 into those squares to get you up to 18. It's the only way of doing it. But you can't put a 2 in any of the yellow squares. So this is not 8, this is 2, this is 8. 8 must go, 8 must go in one of those two positions. Okay. Oh, I feel like we're really close to finishing it. I don't know whether to do Sudoku. Does there have to be a 1? Yeah, there does. There has to be a 1 in this 18 cage. This one I think we've used fully. I mean, I know that this cage, well, it doesn't matter anymore, so that's just got to be 2, 3, 5 and 6. Those ones can't be 5. That one can't be 3 or 6. This one can be anything. Where does 7 go in column 5 of the grid? Look. It's got to go there because of this 7 ruling out that square. Let's repeat the trick. Where does 5 go in column 5? It can only go here. So we get a bit further. That's got to be a 2 or a 4. 7 can't go there, so this is 7. Something a little bit interesting has happened now to this cage. This cage is adding to 18, and it can't have 7, 8, or 9 in it in either box. And it can't be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 because that only adds up to 15. So there must be a 6 in this cage. And look, it can only go here. That's a 6, that's a 1, that's a 1, that's a 4. These two squares have got to add up to 9. So they've got to be 4 and 5, looking at what the options are. And there's a 4 here. So that's 4, that's 5, that's 3. These two squares must include 3, so we can put those in. That must be a 6 now. And maybe I'm on the home straight. Now those are a 3 and a 6, which we can do. Yeah, that's a 6, that's a 3, that's a 1, that's a 3, that's a 2. That's not 2 anymore. That's got to be the 8 in the column. So that's a 4, that's a 2, that's an 8. That's a 4. Now if I haven't made an error, and I hope I haven't, let's tidy up the pencil marks and do this slowly for maximum satisfaction. These have got to be 2 and 5, so that should be 5, that should be 2. And we click check, and we've done it. What a great puzzle. That is just brilliant, isn't it? I don't feel I did that very well at all in places, and for that I apologise, but I kept forgetting about the way the rules worked, even though I've done one of these before. But I did get through it, and it was logical, and it's blooming clever to set this puzzle, let me tell you. To do that without any cage totals is startling. So well done to RockyRoer. It's another great puzzle to add to your oeuvre, and I hope you enjoyed watching me struggle through it. And we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.